round the wrong way. But he was talking about the worlds as subjective and object, and most importantly, worlds 2 and 3. Worlds 3 being the objective information that you get from an artwork, the theories attached to it, and world 2 is the subjective response. Now, Kaupapa was pretty interested in trying to create theories that spoke about the world and how we inhabit it, in the sense that we look at ideas objectively, because in his mind a lot of the issues around how we live and operate as humans in this world is because we live in our subjective selves, and we are just we have emotive reactions to other people. You know, we're not willing to listen to their ideas. We're only willing to listen to our own ideas. We can't look at a balance point between two sets of ideas, and I mean, in some sense, democracy tries to establish that. So, in a way that one you could bring to this work is to look at the way that the ideas that Dan Arps is giving to you to consider, and I think there is an emotive quality in the work, because, you know, he talked about disgust, you know, he loads some of his objects, his systems, so that in the, you know, they could repel, but on the other hand, you need to also, he's asking you to move through that, to look at what lies behind that. So in my, you know, looking into his work over the weekend, although I know it well, I wanted to sort of try to come to some understanding today. And within this booklet here, it references the Watchman. And I thought it was an interesting starting point for his work, because it is a reader that he's provided. And the Watchman is a 12 comic series, a 12 booklet series put out, and one of the opening statements, or one of the headers of the Watchman is, I don't mind being the smartest man in the world, I just wish it wasn't this one. So it was a sense that the comic series was about establishing or querying the reality of this world, and it was put out in sort of like the, just check my dates here. It was put out between 1986 and 1987, and it was like setting up a superhero who in some sense solves the world, or sought to solve the problems of the world. And it was particularly looking at America and the Vietnam War, the you know, the general fear that there was going to be, Soviet Russia was going to set up an atomic war. So there's all these sort of considerations that the comic was talking about. And so it was like the comic book was talking about a superhero, but it was also a portal to another world. And I think in some sense this work plays with that sense of being a portal into what world we don't know. It may be just a portal into the world of the artist's mind, or into your world, into your mind. But it's again the sense that the objects don't inherently hold the meaning, but they hold a set of keys to a meaning that you set up within yourself. You are the code, you are the reader, and in some sense you can see the way that this, when I came in here on Friday to look at the work, it was as if, you know, it's nearly like a failed system, I think. Dan doesn't try to force anything upon you, and you know, I found it interesting that he said that some of these works were like blanks or pauses or gaps to ease off on this overloading of signage. So he's set up this as a very flat installation, and that's very much part of the work, is that you don't want to control the reading. It has to be very open and it doesn't impose anything upon you. So there was also a sense I noticed there's actually, you know, like strangely enough, and I don't know if it was considered, but there is a sort of like a midpoint and everything sort of spans out. So it's a sort of like a circular ground that's been played with, a sort of grid that has been set up, which is quite a good formal device to basically allow things to exist themselves within a grid, within another coded sign system. And I think Dan Arps is a philosopher, because most artists are indeed interested in signs and playing with meanings and shifting meanings. And ultimately it's the meaning that's held within mass psychology, or the overview of a global mindset that this work is dealing with. It's not actually dealing with the mind of the artist, but it's dealing with an artist who's commenting upon the signs of our culture and how they exist in 2010, and the collection of these detritus, in some sense, this junk that our culture tends to, you know, throw out on the road, or it's an economy of frugality. It's not an expensive economy. It's not expensive artworks in their starting point. They're basically all failed systems, in the sense that they've been rejected by somebody, or some commercial sense, or a combination of rejected science, which the artist has brought together for you to make sense of. So I think the most useful thing leaving this work, or indeed any artwork, is that you take away with it potentially a key of understanding for you yourself into what the meaning of life is for you yourself. I think that's basically what most work is here to set up, and Dan's is certainly that type of work. So I would round off at this point, and if there's anyone who wants to talk, I can hang around. And do you want to add anything, Dan?
No, that's good.
Okay.
But if there are any, maybe lots of questions.
Yeah. So maybe we'll just hang around, and if anyone wants to talk to us, we can. So thank you everyone for being here, and you've got the tickets to now enjoy the show.